So today I came across a very interesting article on marginalevolution.com, and this is those new service sector jobs, Coffin Whisperer edition. How can you be a Coffin Whisperer? That's what we will learn today. Some of the new jobs which are being created out there. This article was published on September 10th of 2020 by Tyler Cohen, a professor. So Bill Hediger has, in his own words, no respect for the living. Instead, his royalty is to the newly departed clients who hire Mr. Hediger, known as the Coffin Confessor, to carry out their wishes from beyond the grave. Hediger runs a business in which for $10,000 is engaged by people knocking on death's door to go to their funerals or gravesites and reveal the secrets they want their loved ones to know. They got to have a voice, and I lent them my voice for them, Hediger said. Mr. Hediger, a Gold Coast private investigator, said the idea of his graveside hustle came when he was working for a terminally ill man. He says that we got on to the topic of dying and death, and he said he had like to do something. Mr. Hediger said. I said, well, I could always crash your funeral for you. And a few weeks later, the man called and took Mr. Hediger up on his offer, and a business was born. In almost 2 years, he has crashed 22 funerals. In 2 years, he has crashed 22 funerals and the graveside events, spilling the tightly held secrets of his clients who pay a flat fee of $10,000 for his service. Further, in the case of this very first client, Mr. Hediger said he was instructed to interrupt the man's best friend when he was delivering the eulogy. I was to tell the best mate to sit down and shut up, he said. I also had to ask three mourners to stand up and to please leave the service, and if they didn't, I was to escort them out. So my client didn't want them at his funeral, and like he said, it is his funeral, and he wants to live how he wanted to live, not on somebody else's terms. Despite the confronting nature of his job, Mr. Hediger said, and I quote him, once you get the crowd on your side, you are pretty right, end of quote. Because mourners were keen to know what was left unsaid. You might think that is it, but no. The article is very interesting. Trout. I hope the article will open. The Coffin Confessor. Bill Hediger paid to get crash Queensland funerals and speak up for the dead. So before you die, you leave your secrets with someone. That's a business idea. This someone is paid $10,000, which is equivalent to 1 million Kenyan shillings. Then the man will expose the secrets that you want to be exposed or you want to reveal. So he works for the dead. Very interesting. Yes, so far, of course, from this story, crashed on 22 funerals and graveside services on behalf of clients. That is part of his job experience. His unusual job is said to be played out on screen in a TV series. Of course, that is very interesting because you are the only one who knows the secrets of the people who have died. That is a story, a big story. And a very interesting one, a unique one. The gentleman Hediger here saw a gap which was unfulfilled, so he jumped on it and he has a business. His work is to get crash on funerals, tell people what was left unsaid. Like now in this case, he told the priest to sit down. Mr. Edgar said his arrogance was what made his job possible. So he's an arrogant man. You can't just walk in with your humility. You have to be arrogant. I have been to a church service, I'm quoting him, where I actually had to ask the priest to sit down and be quiet because my client didn't want a religious service. He was quite offended, but at the same time he understood. Mr. Edgar protects himself legally by recording his client's confession, and also provides them with a disclosure statement, especially if I'm asked to go into a premises that the person used to own and get rid of some items that they don't want their kids to find. Hey. So if a man dies or a woman dies and they had something in their apartments which they never want family members to find, this is the guy who does all those jobs. So it could be sexual items, it could be pornography, it could be money, drugs, guns. The instructions are to basically destroy everything. It's a very interesting job. Okay, so I say, well, this is the contract I have with my client. If it doesn't go ahead, I take my client with me, he said. That means that I have arranged previously to have the body of my client taken away and cremated or buried at a private ceremony. Because how many funerals have you been to and you have listened to absolute crap? He said. If you hear something at a funeral and you don't like it, stand up and say something. Become your own confessor. Danger sin, okay? It's a really dangerous job because sometimes, like here in Africa, sometimes you might be roughed up or beaten up. There are dangers associated with pump shells from the grave, because one psychologist, Shona Innes, said enlisting the help of a person like Mr. Edgar was the ultimate avoidance. It is certainly not healthy. I think it is better to resolve things while you are alive. Okay, that brings us to an end of this story about the Coffin Confessor. People who create new jobs where your work is to reveal what was unsaid. Okay, let's end it there. If you have not subscribed, please do so right now before we move to the next story.